жру от мандарин.
Anatoly Lebedko drew the horror of his detention cell. Here, the guards who dressed entirely in black and who tried to break him day after day.
Неизвестность – это действительно испытание. С тобой могут сделать все, что угодно. Ты как вещь, как собственность. Каждый день тебя выгоняют в подвал, в холодное помещение, раздевают догола, и ты должен стоять 30-40 минут, не двигаясь, в таком положении. Конечно, это пытки. Я не получал писем от родных. И когда я получил первое письмо, это было даже скорее маленькая записка, где рукой моего сына было написано: «Папа, у нас все хорошо». И тогда я впервые отвернулся к стене, и я заплакал.
The president's disgraced friend spent 108 days in prison.
Когда я сидел в тюрьме, нас были десятки, сейчас тысячи. И это ужасно.
Between 1994 and 2020, Alexander Lukashenko was re-elected 6 times, with over 80% of the votes. None of these elections were validated by the international community.
А вот в 2020 году у него не стало ни международной легитимности, ни легитимности внутри страны. И поэтому практически все это время он провел в военных казармах, на полигонах, с военными, с генералами. Он понял, что только с их помощью он может оставить за собой власть.
For 30 years, Lukashenko has been consolidating his power at the expense of his people, whose freedoms are constantly decreasing. The youth is the first to suffer. In Minsk at nightfall, young people meet in the bars that animate the streets of the historical center. We go to one of the most famous, known for its live concerts. Local bands play rock classics. A place to party like in any other country, according to the bouncer.
Я 10 лет работаю, и настолько позитивная обстановка в рок-клубе, что ни в другом в одном клубе такой позитивной обстановки нет. Атмосфера.
Everything seems normal until we start the conversation.
Do you have a lighter?
Mistrust reigns.
Traveling, holidays.
Here.
Yes?
Holidays here.
Yes.
Traveling. Better to here.
Yes, sure.
Are you fucking out of your mind?
Sorry, what?
Are you fucking out of your mind? You're not here in Belarus. The most fucking unsafe country right now in the world. Do you even know what's going on here?
No, maybe no.
Really?
No? You don't want to tell me.
No. I don't know you. I don't know whether or not you're a fucking agent or something like that, you know?
What?
Agent? You're just going to jail here right now for saying these words. I don't agree with that. You go to jail for 40 days. Right away.
Okay.
And that's the least you can get. We don't trust anyone here these days. We don't trust.
Okay, no problem.
No politics talks. Just chilling. Just chilling.
These young Belarusians belong for the most part to the educated middle class, which has emerged in recent years in the country. They are the ones who are particularly targeted by the government.
And what are you doing here?
And they hate us. They try to make a lot of taxes for us, so they look like they are the enemy of government. We're thinking too much, we too much clever.
When you meet people that you don't know, for example, in the work and stuff, are you afraid of talking about that? We cannot talk about politics in the street, for example, and stuff.
You can maybe, but please don't try it. No. 20% of people, they can be something like cops, or tied up to cops.
And my idea I want to share that the government, like in North Korea, they imagine the situation to kind of create a North Korea in our country. But more than 80% of all Belarusians are not. They are educated, European, free people. And that's the reason why you are comfortable with us.
Let's drink like never before. Like it will be the last time.
Have the time to meet some people.
Belarus is the only country of the former USSR to have kept the name KGB to refer to its secret police. And it has lost nothing of its formidable efficiency. The KGB arrests and imprisons without needing any justification. We are expected 1 hour from the capital, in one of the big cities located in the west of the country. In order not to attract attention, the person we are going to meet has formally forbidden us to speak French and English on the street. On the 25th of June 2020, Daria's husband was arrested by the KGB.
Сначала я не пустила их в квартиру. На мои слова они ответили, что если я не впущу их, то они будут взрывать дверь при полуторагодовалом ребенке.
Igor, her husband, a freelance journalist, ran a news channel on the internet. His articles were not openly critical of the government, but after a sham trial, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison for disturbing the peace.
Вот здесь, на этом стуле, лежат его шорты. Они здесь находятся с 25 июня 2020 года, я не могу их убрать.
After her husband's arrest, Daria resigned from her job as a civil servant. It was impossible for her to continue working for the state that separated her 3-year-old daughter from her father.
Да, she helps me. Я никогда не была сторонницей действующей власти, но так открыто об этом я не говорила. То есть, забрав моего супруга, можно сказать так, они меня просто радикализировали. Когда я объявила голодовку вместе с мужем, мне поступила информация, что мою дочь могут забрать. Безусловно, волнение за дочь присутствует, но со своей стороны на данный момент я сделала все, чтобы в случае, например, моего задержания она оказалась в безопасности.
Whenever she can, on social networks, Daria criticizes the state, but she tries never to cross the line.
Интернет в Беларуси, он под контролем. Я стараюсь говорить все, как оно есть, но делаю это так, чтобы не нарваться на уголовную статью, так скажем, красиво, но не так, чтобы вызвать агрессию с их стороны.
As a dissident, Daria is entitled to special treatment.
Если в моей квартире жучки, там видео, либо звукозаписывающее устройство, я не могу сказать, бытует такое мнение, что они могут ставить прослушки в лампочки либо в светильники. Но я знаю 100%, что в моей машине есть прослушка, и я даже постараюсь показать то место, где она находится. Я ставила машину на парковке, вернулась, а кнопочка была вот так. Она так никогда не делала. Соответственно, как бы здесь все предельно ясно.
So Daria asks us to be quiet. Only our translator is allowed to ask questions in Russian.
Как на него это заточение повлияло?
В ЖОДе на предъявление окончательных обвинений он совершил попытку суицида, и психолог, недолго думая, сказал, вены режутся не вот так, а вот так, если ты хочешь, чтобы уже с концами. То есть, это психолог. Я откровенно желаю психологу сжечь свой диплом, либо подпереть им стол, который плохо стоит.
Daria goes to visit her husband twice a week, but the couple is forbidden to touch each other.
С моей стороны стекло, с его стороны стекло, и между ними решетка. И все это через телефонную трубку, то есть как-то обнять его, либо взять за руку я не могу. Свидание длится 2 часа, ты все это время говоришь по телефону с ним. Все это, конечно же, записывается. В моем случае это подавно, потому что меня всегда садят в одну и ту же кабинку, видимо, с хорошей прослушкой, пишущей прослушкой.
Despite the risks, Daria agreed to speak openly. She doesn't want to hide anymore.
Страх они убили во мне путем давления на моего мужа, давления на мою семью. Чем больше они хотят хуже сделать для меня, тем больнее для них я буду отвечать.
We won't go with her to prison. The risk of being arrested is too high. For the past few years, people like Daria have dared to speak out and challenge the absolute power of their president. And sometimes it ends in a bloodbath. Today in Belarus, it's forbidden to dress in red and white. The colors of the former flag of the country became the rallying sign of opponents. In the summer of 2020, during the last presidential election, Alexander Lukashenko was faced with a problem. This lady here. Svetlana Tikhanovskaya. She entered the presidential race the day her husband, a famous opponent, was in prison. The English teacher knew how to wake up her people who didn't dare to rebel. She made them realize that the infinite power of Alexander Lukashenko was not indestructible.
Но сейчас то самое время, когда каждый должен переступить свой страх. Вы думаете, мне не страшно? Друзья, мне страшно каждый день. Но я встаю, я собираю свою волю в кулак, я переступаю свой страх и иду дальше. Иду навстречу победе.
But unsurprisingly, Alexander Lukashenko won votes that would make anyone nostalgic of the Soviet era envious. 80% of the votes. Immediately, the authoritarian president wants those who wish to contest this result.
Если вы будете бороться против страны, если вы будете пытаться даже в мельчайших каких-то вещах ввергнуть страну и в хаос и дестабилизировать, вы получите мгновенный от меня ответ.
Except that this time, his people do not conform and instead rebel. Hundreds of thousands of people take to the streets with a slogan. As promised, his response is fatal. The president gives the order to shoot the crowd. A dozen deaths, hundreds of injuries, tens of thousands of arrests. And he was not finished there. During the following weeks, the KGB is peeled to social networks. No demonstrator can escape them. A video attracts their attention. It goes viral on the Belarusian web. This little 4-year-old boy, also in red and white, has become one of the symbols of resistance. As such, the KGB started to pursue him. The story of this pursuit is hardly believable. For a year and a half, Victor and his mother have been hiding in Lithuania.
Ай, привет, мой котик. Привет, мой зайку. Как привет? Хорошо. Давай, пойдем.
It video was very virus video. Everywhere they put in Forbes and everywhere some people started to call me from America and said, "Are you crazy? You need to run away immediately." Blah blah blah. I say, "Come on, it's kid. Why? No, not so." No, nobody expects so big pressure on these things, you know.
The Belarusian KGB knows that martyrs and symbols do much more harm than the best of speakers. To find Victor, the secret police launches a titanic program, sifting through all the schools of the capital and its suburbs.
They sent to every kindergarten's video and ask director just to, if they find them kid, just to call. And the director called me and said, oh, come to our kindergarten. I say, it's still warm, we're outside of the city, soon we come. But my friend, she's understood because she saw it, and she recognized him, and she called me and she said, don't go to kindergarten.
Irina fled, leaving everything behind. She had to abandon her business, her family, and particularly her husband, a demonstrator. He was imprisoned a few days before the video of his son. Today, he has been in prison for a year and a half for simply wanting to express his discontent. The whole of Europe condemns this savage repression. President Lukashenko is weakened, but he still receives strong support, that of their Russian big brother. According to Jean de Glignasty, former diplomat specialist in Eastern countries, between the two men, their relationship is one of love and hate. Vladimir Putin would like to replace him, but he has no choice but to support him.
Les Russes veulent changer Loukachenko. Ils ne sont pas contents de ce dirigeant qui les a menés un peu par le bout du nez, qui leur a extorqué des tas d'avantages économiques, avec qui il est difficile de parler. Donc ils veulent le changer, mais ils savent que le changer en ce moment, ça serait difficile. Et puis ça risquerait aussi d'ouvrir les vannes à une contestation et l'apparition de dirigeants beaucoup plus pro-occidentaux. Donc en période de guerre avec l'Ukraine, de nouveaux rideaux de fer avec les sanctions, je pense qu'il va rester encore en place assez longtemps.
The unlimited violence used to repress demonstrations and the hijacking of the Ryanair plane have led Europe to tighten the sanctions against Belarus. But they are far from destabilizing the country. Jean de Glignasty explains that with Alexander Lukashenko, it's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
Et donc à ce moment-là, Loukachenko, typique du dirigeant, réflexe un peu de cours de récréation, eh bien ils m'ont fait des ennuis, je vais leur faire des ennuis. Donc ils ont attiré, dans la perspective de s'installer en Europe, attiré littéralement un certain nombre de migrants syriens et du Moyen-Orient. Et une fois qu'ils étaient en Biélorussie, on les a envoyés à la frontière polonaise et à la frontière lituanienne.
The Belarusian authorities charter several planes to Iraq. They come back loaded with thousands of migrants to whom they promised fast access to Europe. Only
Legal border crossing is forbidden. You will face criminal charges.
But it's too late. The trap has closed. The Belarusian policemen prevent the migrants from turning back and force them to move forward with truncheons. Blocked in a no-man's land with temperatures approaching -30, some die of cold. A humanitarian crisis breaks out. Alexander Lukashenko accuses Europeans of mistreatment.
Я поручил министру, он на завтра позвонил иностранных дел. Ответ. Да нам сейчас не до этого, у нас командировки, те контактные лица. Мы, видно, не хотят решать эту проблему. Это было связано с...
C'est un geste de mauvaise humeur qui a marqué d'ailleurs la dureté du personnage, parce que ces gens étaient affreusement maltraités, mais donc c'est une vengeance pure et simple.
While the migrant crisis is in full swing, Vladimir Putin and the Belarusian president have an ice hockey match. The master of the Kremlin is playing in the same team as Alexander Lukashenko. This is a very clear message addressed to the whole world. Sanctioning Belarus is to attack Russia.
Это два идеологических близнеца. Два человека, которые больны на власть. И при этом они ненавидят друг друга.
In exchange for this support, the Belarusian president lets Vladimir Putin install his army along the border with Ukraine. Officially, it's only a question of joint military maneuvers between the two countries. The international community is worried, and there is reason to be. Satellite images show that the Russian army occupies no less than 5 military fields and 4 air bases. They are also installing high-tech equipment, as shown in these images from the Russian Ministry of Defense, with its impressive anti-aircraft batteries in place. The morning of February 24th, we're in Minsk, and we discover at the same time as the rest of the world the announcement of war. Russian troops stationed in Belarus are invading Ukraine. We start to feel a little tense. France strongly condemns the attack, and we're surely the last French tourists in the country now. We fear that the KGB will start to dig into our backgrounds and discover that we are journalists. Today we have a meeting with an opponent, but when we call her bad news, she refuses to meet us.
Je pense qu'elle a eu trop peur aujourd'hui. Je crois que le déclenchement de la guerre en Ukraine a complètement bouleversé parce qu'elle est du pays. Donc, annulation.
The opponent advised us to change our accommodation quickly. She fears for our safety. A few hours later, we arrived in a new guest house at the other end of the city. However, we don't feel calm. We do a quick inspection just to make sure ears are not hidden in the walls. We look around the street. It seems we were not followed. But it's impossible to be sure. Our biggest fear is to be arrested for espionage. And as we feared, our trip in Belarus will end badly. Vladimir Putin did not choose to invade Ukraine on February the 24th by chance. It marks the holiday of the defender of the fatherland. This holiday, which dates back to the former USSR, is celebrated throughout Belarus with parades and reenactments of battles like this one. We are shocked that the festivities have not been cancelled, while on the other side of the border, men are killing each other. Here, extras reenact war.
Сегодня мы продолжаем празднование Дня защитников Отечества и Вооруженных сил Республики Беларусь.
Among the spectators, there are many nostalgic for the father of peoples and the lost splendor of the Soviet Union. So of course, Putin supporters are present in large numbers, and for them, this war with Ukraine is well justified.
Показали украинцам, что мы хотим, куда хотим было пойти. Армия обучена в Сирии, в Чечне. С ней украинцы, которые давно не воевали, могут сражаться. Сейчас они отсюда, из-под Минска, где-то руководят всеми действиями на Украине. Из Гомеля, просто ближе к границе.
Many Belarusians watch only Russian TV channels, and this is evident from the speech of this extra, a carbon copy of Putin.
Объясняю, почему. Есть такое понятие геополитика. Геополитика. Чтобы завтра нам ногами не стучали в двери, и наши женщины не насиловали прямо при мне на столе, это делается еще на дальних подступах. Прекратите это. Почему? Потому что за это время на Украине вырастили нацистов. Оским в 1945 году вырастили нацистов. И это сейчас надо просто прекратить. Поэтому там тоже сейчас русские погибнут. Кто-то домой дождется гроба цинкового. Груз 200.
But in Belarus, not everyone is pro-Russian, nor pro-war. Quite the contrary. This is what this taxi driver explains to us as we film discreetly.
Гражданские люди не хотят войны и не будут воевать с Украиной, так как это наши люди.
The man would never have spoken openly. The dome of terror that covers the country is having its effect. The fear of prison silences part of the population. The few brave ones who dare are quickly dealt with by plainclothes policemen, as in this video. Fleeing the country is the only way to criticize the government without risking ending up in a prison cell. Political opposition go into exile in the neighboring country of Lithuania. Its capital, Vilnius, is only 170 kilometers from Minsk. Today, it hosts a large part of anti-Lukashenko demonstrators, starting with Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who took refuge here a year ago, the English teacher who had the courage to confront the tyrant president during the presidential elections of 2020. Not surprisingly, she lost because of rigged elections. Today, she demands the presidency. Threatened with death, she went into exile here with a close bodyguard. For her, the danger is real. So before meeting Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, we must show our credentials. After the search, we are confined in a room, or rather in this safety lock.
This is the border. Yes, this is the border between the open part of our office and the closed part,
Okay, so
and public
don't go,
part. Yes,
don't go there,
you,
no.
yes. Oh yeah,
Anna Krasolina, the press officer, is not kidding. Threats are daily.
Yesterday, I received a letter from, I don't know from whom, maybe from KGB agent, with a threat to be killed and to be cut off my head.
The first time you received that?
No, a lot.
And she has reason to take it very seriously. Last summer, Vitaly Chikov, another opponent, was found hanged in Kiev. The Ukrainian police suspect a murder disguised as suicide. His colleagues accuse the Belarusian KGB. The president in exile finally shows herself. Like a head of state, Svetlana Tikhanovskaya has many meetings with European diplomats. Today, she met with the ambassadors of the Czech Republic and Spain.
15, 20 minutes.
Svetlana Tikhanovskaya assures us that as soon as she recovers the presidential mandate, which is rightfully hers, she will quickly cut ties with Vladimir Putin.
Lukashenko dragged Belarus into this war against our brother Ukraine. We see that he's losing our independence. After front election 2020, only thanks to Russian